Today's webinar is entitled Microsoft Copilot. Can we use it? Should we use it? If so, how? There's a lot of buzz around AI, generative AI, and specifically around Microsoft's product, Copilot, and the many iterations that exist of that product and that product name and the like. So hopefully we'll shed a little bit more light on really if you're at that part in your journey where you're not sure fully what Copilot is and you're not using it yet, or maybe you're on your way there and you're struggling a little bit and looking for some guidance, or maybe you're a pro and you're just here for extra information, and we'll welcome that engagement. So this morning, my name is John Cole. I'm a solution architect on the IT solutions practice within Sikich. So we're heavily in IT strategy, consulting, solution design, and for the last year and a half or so, really focusing on Copilot in the in the IT solutions area of Sikich and our team, and how it interacts. You know, we do a lot with Microsoft 365 and integrations from there, and so it makes a lot of sense from a Microsoft perspective to look at Copilot and to see what can it do for our own organization and other organizations, right? Because AI is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. So a quick agenda. What is it? Should we be using it? Is there a real value or a use case or multiple use cases for my organization? And if that's true, where do we start? And a couple tips and tricks if you're already using it or sort of on your journey, or just to prime that thought process around if you were to engage and get started in your process and using it, what are some effective ways to use it? And what I found is a lot of that, it's more in thinking than technical aptitude. We'll have a section on how Sikich can help and some wrap-ups and next steps all the way at the end. So I think if we ask some holistic questions around employees or users in an organization and what their experiences are day to day, digital debt's costing us a lot. Right, 64% of employees say they don't have enough time and energy to do their job. So even if they want to, they feel like they don't have enough time, or they can't put in enough effort to actually get it all done. 57% of employees' time is spent communicating one way or another, whether that's a phone call, email, chat, another meeting, you know, perhaps, whatever that may be. And maybe that's increased due to some of the remote work or collaborative benefits that have happened over the last several years. But it does add to the digital debt because that's just more time we're spent sort of invested around doing work, but not doing the work specifically. And only about 43% of employee time is spent creating, regardless of that role. So maybe that's in sales, that's proposal or memos or follow-ups, or for some folks, it's presentations, slide decks, pitches, what have you, that creativity point. And so looking at that experience, right, 87% of organizations feel that leveraging generative AI can offer them a competitive advantage. Now, how much you use it versus how big that advantage is, it's going to vary between industry and user, but 87% basically sort of puts the feeling out there that almost everyone believes that they could obtain some sort of value from leveraging generative AI in their organization to some capacity. And so out of all the AI solutions out there and Gen AI solutions out there, we're going to focus on, we say one, but really it's one platform with a plethora of different options and services underneath it. So Copilot and Microsoft 365 Copilot specifically. Microsoft's undergone some name changes over the past years with this product, which isn't anything new. It's developing quickly, new features every single day. Keeping up with it can be challenging. But for the time being, this product is Microsoft 365 Copilot. And really, what is it? Quite simply, I want to summarize it in just sort of one thought. As Microsoft puts it, Microsoft 365 Copilot is your AI assistant at work. You're still the pilot. So I want to set the stage for the Microsoft approach. It's not so much about an AI or Gen AI product that does your job for you or replaces a person. In fact, Microsoft's whole approach and their delivery model is really a service or a technology to add on, to build upon the capabilities of the user, of the pilot, right? A co-pilot doesn't mean you're in charge, right? The title alone insinuates that you are alongside a pilot or your co-pilot. So at minimum, you're both co-pilots, but really it's what is that user? What is that person's abilities? What's their skill sets? What's their knowledge? What's their aptitude? And how can we build on that? How can we raise the bar? How can we help them do what they already know how to do, but do better? And so a couple things Microsoft's trying to solve for in a couple areas, right, is the broken meeting, the information labyrinth, and the blank page. So the first section is really, so many people are joining meetings, there's conversations. Some people think they're in too many meetings. Some people think there are not enough meetings. They don't remember what they discussed in the meeting, or what they remember differs from what someone else remembers in that meeting. And sometimes people are afraid to brainstorm or bring ideas in meetings for fear of, you know, what have you, right? There's so many meetings, and some of them are necessary, but the results of them are not always as effective as they could be. Looking for information. I know this is out there somewhere. I know we have this documented somewhere. Someone told me this, but I don't know who, I don't know where. So you're constantly searching for information, whether that's in SharePoint Online searches, or you're looking in your email inbox, or you're searching through Teams and you're trying to find individual chats. I know someone said this. When did they say it? Where's the, I just have a feeling, but I can't find it. And it's going to take me so much time to invest just to find it when the information is there. So Microsoft's trying to solve for that too. So some of the statistics here, 62% say they struggle with spending too much time just searching for information, and 8.8 hours per week on average for a heavy user in email. And that's a lot of time if a lot of that is just creating drafts, responses, and searching for information that already exists. And then we have the other creativity sort of space with Copilot that Microsoft is trying to solve for, that uninterrupted focus time. You have to create a document or a presentation, whether that be a guideline, a press release, a sales pitch, whatever that document or that presentation is that you have to create, starting from a blank page can be really difficult. And so sometimes not having that uninterrupted focus time, right, or just enough time to reset between tasks to then create very well, it's hard to get that inspiration to get started. So really starting from a blank page is very difficult to do. And so if we culminate all those things together and try to think about a solution that would enable us to not completely fix it, but enable us to start with a leg up, let's call it that, Microsoft 365 Copilot is that product. So I do have a couple slides here we'll go through around Copilot. Really, what is it? Right, we know, we've heard ChatGPT, we've heard, Gemini. There's so many different AI tools out there, and realistically, Copilot, M365, Microsoft 365 Copilot leverages several of them. A lot of them are based in ChatGPT 4, and older models. It depends on which model it's using, which is some technical things in the background. But in essence, it's leveraging the large language models which are out there, right? The major players, OpenAI, who really started this whole thing with ChatGPT and that human interface and that language, human language, to be able to leverage the tool without a whole lot of technical expertise to interact with it, right? So those large language models coupled with Microsoft 365 or Microsoft Graph. And if you don't know what Graph is, in Microsoft 365, Graph is the underlying component that houses everything, every storage piece of information, every log, every event, that is stored in Graph. So that's a big component to Copilot and what differs from other offerings. Not that those other offerings aren't great, but if you're already in Microsoft 365, you're trying to start into that generative AI journey because you see the curve is moving, it's moving very quickly. You don't want to fall behind. I think we can have a competitive advantage to some degree if we just figure out how to leverage a product. So with Copilot, not only do you get the benefit of the latest, greatest large language models that are out there as the science and the technology evolves, it's also giving you the ability to use your own data. Microsoft Graph, where your data, your emails, your chats, your SharePoint files, all those interactions, it's able to interact with that in a way that other solutions really can't do, or can't do without some other custom integrations. So it's really a differentiator. And then to take it a step further, not only is it large language models plus the data and everything in the graph uses, the actual product is baked into typically your productivity apps that you're in already, Word, Excel, Outlook, and PowerPoint. We'll show that slide in a minute. So this slide real quickly, I do want to get through this a little bit and not spend too much time, but I want to uh, give you some confidence around the product and security. I know there's a lot of risk talk and there's a lot of concern, as it should be, around moving into a new technology that can do so many things. You need to be careful, and that's 1,000% true, right? My recommendation is to proceed with caution. Understand what your risks and liabilities are, and then take that into account as you use it. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But Microsoft uses this term called grounding, and not a lot of other providers or product manufacturers use it, but really all grounding means it's context. So not only do you have the large language model, but because it's able to leverage that against your data and your organization that already exists, it's able to understand contextually who you are, what your business is, what you do, what roles individuals have, and how all those individual documents and communications all work together to build that context. So as you type in a prompt, yes, it's feeding from large language models to understand how to answer your question, but it's also refining that and basing it, it's grounding it in your data, which is unique to anyone else's, really, right? It's not so much a Google search or even an AI powered search that can't see any of your data. So it's answering a question without context. Really, the product has the ability that when you ask it a question, yes, it's getting the general specifics of how to answer your question, but with the context of who you are in your company, what your role is, what you do, what you have access to, what your business does, what data is there. Wouldn't you much rather have an answer based on context versus just an answer that I don't know if I can trust that or not, because that's irrelevant potentially to who I am and what I do. Along with that, Microsoft has ethical AI use policies and guidelines and guardrails set up. And a big one here, the comprehensive security, compliance, and privacy. So really, from a Copilot perspective, not that there's no concern, but there is a feeling of comfort that what's defined in your Microsoft 365 tenant, what you have defined from a security standpoint, is being inherited by Copilot. So instead of having another system to manage a whole bunch of set of controls, how do I integrate it? How can I do that? Really, it's going to inherit what you already have, which means if you're going to leverage Copilot, you might want to increase some security to tighten some things up, because being honest, you should. It's not increasing the scope of management for your IT staff or increasing the risk from the organization is having another place where all this data can be, and then it has to be governed and secured separately. Because of that tight integration into the M365 platform, it's another, I don't want to say bang for your buck, but it's another check in the pros column of getting started, because it lowers that bar of entry of, okay, this is less management. This makes it easier to a smaller bite to bite off, as it were, because it is a lot to take in. So how do you get started? Well, to do that effectively, you really need to have all these things in line. And then the apps, like we talked about, being in Outlook, in Word, in OneNote, in Excel, in PowerPoint, even in Loop, and online, there's several different places where you can access the tool. So really, without having to go another place, another app, log into another site, another platform, keeping that experience very close is a really, really great feature and a pro to using it. So with the comprehensive approach, the security, compliance, if you're a regulated industry and you have compliance requirements, you're going to have those for M365 anyway. So having that integrated is going to make that journey a lot easier to accomplish and manage, along with any privacy like DLP or sensitivity labeling, those sorts of things that you have. It's going to inherit that. And so that way you can rest assured that if you're regulated in your industry, or you have some special considerations to take into account, it's going to do that for you. It's going to allow you to do that without having a whole other thing to worry about. The business content and context is really everything from these tools, as we already talked about. And then that big piece, semantic index, we talked about context. How does it do that? So semantic index is really a feature I've only heard and seen touted in Microsoft 365 Copilot. And really what this does is not only does it see the information, not only does it see the logs and the data and who did it, it starts to use vectoring to establish billions of relationships between it. So it starts to understand, oh, your name is John, you're a solution architect, this is the type of data, these are the people you work with, these are the type of things that you do. So how it's going to start to answer questions for me and work for me is different than even another team member in my area, but definitely someone different in a different role. And that semantic index is constantly changing and constantly building. And so this is where it's sort of where the gold is as far as Microsoft 365. It's not just about how quickly you can search it, but to understand the context. If you're a manufacturing company, it's going to know that you make products. It's going to know what type of products you make and what that typically looks like, and who places certain materials orders, and who signs off on training manuals, instruction and assembly manuals, all those sorts of things. That starts to build that context so it can even more effectively answer your questions. Another piece we'll talk on quickly, Copilot Studio. So we have sort of the base of Copilot, or Microsoft 365 Copilot that you get, and that's more of a chat-based and tool-based interaction. Copilot Studio allows you to take it further. So let's say we want to be more mature, we want to extend to, we have an ERP, right? We have a Salesforce, we have some other sort of data source that we want the same experience, we want Copilot to be able to see, or we have a specific function, an HR function where people are always asking the HR folks, how do I submit my time, or how do I submit my expenses? And really the documentation is there. They just don't know how to read it very well. Creating custom chatbots or custom agents in Copilot Studio trained on that material, and then publish that via Teams or on your internal intranet. So that way you can train users to go to that, and they'll more effectively get the same answer they're always asking, but it frees up all that efficiency and productivity of what's typically a smaller HR personnel team, and allows them to focus on more valuable and more productive things. So that's sort of, I don't want to say in a nutshell, that's a lot of what Microsoft 365 is, but the big question, should we be using it? I think that could be answered in, there are different types of organizations. Some are always ahead of the curve. I think you don't always have to be ahead of the curve, but somewhere with the curve makes sense. You don't want to be left behind, because then you'll always be catching up. AI and Gen AI is here to stay. And if you ask the question, should we be using Copilot? Well, with the potential of increased productivity, enhanced collaboration, improved decision making, you can potentially achieve some examples, such as some marketing teams reduce their campaign planning time by 30%, or a sales team increase their lead conversion rate by 20%. And that's really not Copilot doing their job for them. It's allowing the individual that knows their job role, that has the expertise, to then do things quicker, more effectively, and more efficiently, and gain insights, and then make decisions based on those insights presented. Right? So it's really that assistant, hey, go find me all this information, organize it this way, so I, the pilot, can make the best decision. Boom, it's done, versus 2-3 hours of doing that manual research and collection yourself. So with those promises, or with those potentials, why wouldn't you use it? Really, is there a real value or use case? Honestly, I believe organizations in any industry, and really any size, can benefit from Microsoft 365 Copilot. I've been in a lot of classes, a lot of training sessions with Copilot, with IT individuals, with individuals of other backgrounds and roles. And when polled, most of the time the question is answered this way, is how much time is Copilot saving you on average? And a lot of people say average 5 hours a week. So with what comes down to roughly a $30 a month license, if someone can save 20 hours a month right away, you've already paid for the license, not to mention maybe what other advanced things that Copilot can allow that user to do that they can't do today, or can't do as effectively today. Right? That's just sort of the minimum bar, is how can I pay for this license, save some time, and then there's sort of no negative for doing it. Everything there is just positive. Where can we go? Where can we grow it? The person knows what they need to do, but what if you can get it done faster with less effort? That really enhances productivity, but also lessens that digital debt, to where people feel better about doing their jobs. They're able to do it more effectively, and not look at the mountain of stuff they have to do, but really, okay, I can do all of this. I can focus most of my time on these high value tasks where my knowledge, my expertise has the most impact, and all these sort of mundane things that need to get done, that I have to do, can just sort of be taken care of themselves. And so a couple of use cases I have in here. um, Copilot in sales, between researching potential prospects or products or competitors in an area, gaining insights from documents sent, contracts sent, maybe competitors' quotes sent, whether you're an account manager, technical sales, telesales, customer success, all those sorts of roles where there's a lot of engagement and interaction. There's a lot of communication, emails being drafted, meetings being held where there's notes to be taken, all of those sorts of things that have a great impact when they're done correctly. Copilot can help that in all the steps of this process, whether it's drafting that proposal based on meeting notes from a meeting that was held with that client or customer previously, or discussion with internal teams, following up with that client with insightful communication based on all those things. Again, that context is there. So leveraging that to spend less time creating a rough draft and doing all those manual tasks can help people in sales, people in marketing, right? Developing drafts or product releases or social media statements, whatever it may be, that same compilation of research, communication, internal notes, and then the draft. That's sort of the three areas where it's low-hanging fruit to use it there, and anything above that is cake. Copilot in finance, and I say in finance, but really anyone, if you're in spreadsheets, if you're in looking for insights in trends, in data tables and things like that, Copilot AI is very good at spotting trends and spotting things to be aware of to provide insights. So just for an average user that might have a spreadsheet with a bunch of tables, last quarter's sales figures, maybe it's an individual sales rep that doesn't have a custom report, and they just want to say, what was my best client, my best month, and there's not a report for that. Being able to leverage Copilot right in an Excel spreadsheet to get that answer in 2 minutes provides a lot of value. There's countless use cases, regardless what role you're in. Like I said, communication, note-taking, anyone who participates in a meeting, whether internally or with a client, can then take effective notes and summarize with intelligent recap what happened in this meeting, who said what, are there any action items? Do I need to schedule another meeting? What do we do from here? Using Copilot to help in that process, limiting that manual effort to get to that effectiveness is really where it shines. Among all the other research and all the other crazy things it can do, right, at the base level of saves me time. I'm not great at taking notes. Well, I don't have to worry about that because in the right way, Copilot would take those notes for me, generate insights. This is what happened. This is what was said. And it's also now in graph. So it's there to be referenced in the future. If you have a series of meetings and you disagree that someone said, well, this is what you said, or this is what I thought you said, you can go back to the transcript and say, hey, what did so-and-so say? And it's there. So it eliminates a lot of the messiness that comes from, just being humans and communicating and maybe being wrong or incorrect, those sorts of things. So all this being said, some of the promises of efficiency, productivity, better work life, just a better work experience, really being able to do your stuff happier. Where do we start? So Copilot can be a lot. I quickly went through a lot of the features, a lot of sort of the base premises of where it's at, but really, if you're not sure where to start, you need to really ask a couple questions, or you need to take a look at a couple things. The organization's AI, Gen AI readiness. Are we ready? Maybe you are, maybe you're not, and maybe you're unsure. And I would put all the unsure into the, yeah, we need to determine what we need to do to say, okay, we need to implement a strategy. Your user base's readiness, the M365 tenant security readiness, and then the implementation and training capabilities of your current team members. So really it's, here's Copilot. How do we use it? Are we capable to use it? Is our security in M365 configured in a way that makes us comfortable to limit our risk and liability in using it? And how do we ensure that if we turn it on, that we know what we're doing with it, or enable our users to not feel like they've been just dropped off in the Atlantic Ocean or Pacific Ocean or any other deep body of water that you can imagine and just feel like there's so much information, I can't make heads or tails of any of this, right? These are some important questions to ask, and I have a final slide of how Sikich can help with some of that. I do want to hit on a couple tips and tricks really quick. If you're already leveraging it, you're kind of playing around with it already. A lot of it's in prompting and strategy. So one strategy, we get in the habit of Googling, as I say, or using a search engine and asking questions. Copilot, do this for me. Can you do this for me? Can you do this for me? What is this? What is this? There's also a method called the flipped conversation model. And it's where you give it a statement and then it tells you what questions you should be asking. Meaning, hey, Copilot, I have to prepare for a webinar on Tuesday at 11. And leave it at that. And it'll come up with questions. Well, maybe do you want to see more information on Copilot security? Do you want to see information on attendees? Copilot, help me prepare for a client proposal delivery call next Thursday. And it's going to find everything that it can around that and prep you. Summarize all our client conversations on this topic. Right? You're giving it a statement, and then it's coming back and it's going to ask you questions to do. Ensuring that you're being highly engaging and iterative and asking better questions. So ask longer questions with more details. Not, for example, you can even search best Italian restaurant. Is that a good question? Or Copilot, what are the top 10 Italian restaurants in the greater Chicago area that have whatever your favorite dish is on the menu that's open on this date, right? That take reservations, that's within 30 minutes of this location. All that in the same question, and it could create a whole table of that, which could be an hour's worth of research. You're just trying to figure out where to take a client or where to go to dinner yourself. Or more importantly, who are my top 3 competitors in this market for these services? And it can go out there and provide you a table so then you can further your research. So whatever role you're in, that conversational iterative, don't be afraid to keep asking questions. Also, I think a big one for me is don't rule out tasks that might be too small. I think sometimes when we think about Copilot, we think, oh, we can do all these great, crazy things. It's wonderful. And well, that's just not important enough to have it do. Honestly, the little tasks are really, in my opinion, where it shines. It shines that way for me every day. It's what was this last proposal that was drafted for this particular implementation? And it shows me another team member did this and who it is, or where it is, and what ticket number it is. And I go and find it, and I can reference that. Or if something went wrong, I can build from there. Or what was the last thing another team member sent to me, right? Asking it questions so I just spend less time searching. Search my email for the last conversation. When was my last meeting with so-and-so? All those sorts of things, instead of you doing it in the search box and finding it yourself, it's very quick. It's there. And likely it'll prompt you with more conversations to get more insight in that same vein of questioning. So don't rule out tasks that might be too small. So I think the last thing, how can Sikich help? So with all this being said and so much more that can and has been said about Copilot, we have a Microsoft 365 Copilot Head Start workshop. And really what that is, the purpose of that is to assess and confirm your organization's readiness with a review of your Microsoft 365 tenant for security and governance, training and education for your team and users on Gen AI and Copilot functionality and features, right? Discover and determine your first use cases, establish the license selection, and launch your pilot. So it's the pilot for your pilot group. We want you to be enabled. Number one, we want you to be safe and protected before enabling Copilot, because there are some, I don't want to say Copilot is inherently risky, but it could increase the effectiveness of vulnerabilities that already exist in your environment. And that's a more effective way to put it. The vulnerabilities are already there. Just with an AI tool, they can be taken advantage of to a greater extent. So how do we ensure that we're on the right path for the immediate and long term? What things do we need to keep in mind? And then ensuring that your pilot group has the right level of training and information, so that way they can really become Copilot champions and establish, beyond basic use cases, right, really proprietary use cases for your individual organization's processes, to where, an outside consultant or another third party, another company isn't going to do things the same way that you do. So having that ingrained into those unique processes are going to provide so much value. And they're only going to be able to do that if they're not starting from ground zero or maybe underground, right? So that training, that prompt training, that discussion and engineering, showing you how to use it and where to use it and what the experience is of each Copilot app and why are they all over the place and which ones are the same and which ones are different, right? It can be confusing. And so to have that all in one engagement, so that way at the end of it, your pilot group is really, they've got a leg up. They're enabled. They're getting to those use cases. They're getting to that really valuable stuff much quicker than they would if you just assigned a license and let it go. So I know it's been a quick 30 minutes and I've said a lot. If Sikich can help you in your journey with Microsoft 365 Copilot, I've got some information on the screen. Please reach out and ask us. The workshop is really beneficial to getting started with that process. And I'd like to thank you for attending this webinar this morning. Have a great rest of your day.